Allow, and you should be seeing. Yes. Okay. Finally. All right. Let me just start. So I want to come back to the topic that I'm super excited about. That I started talking about what did we meet a month ago, something like that, when I was talking about using disposable local dev environments, right? So basically using like Docker images or Docker Compose files to bring a couple of Docker images together, so that you don't need to install Python, you don't need to install Node locally. You can basically build whatever you need locally, and then you destroy that, and then you come back on Monday, you rebuild everything, and everything is pretty much the same, at the same state as it should be. This is working nice, especially this is working nice when using Docker networks, because in Docker Compose you can just basically those services would connect together. But what we've seen at my company is that especially when you are past a certain number of services, or if you're running a bunch of databases and then you also want to run Elastic, or then you want to run a RabbitMQ, it might be too much for your machine, right? It's still not a very nice developer experience. So what we started experimenting with is, and I believe this is where I ended last time, we started experimenting with using powerful remote machines as the engines for your still development but no longer local development environment, right? So we are seeing some success. It's still not, it's working, but still the adoption is not great. But what I want to demo today is basically how we use gitpod.io, because I think this is very, very interesting approach. And then during our third episode, I'll probably talk about hybrid approaches, how to bring it all together. The idea behind Gitpod, or the idea is basically analogous to like GitHub Spaces, I believe it's called, or workspaces, is that it gives you a remote environment where you can basically run code, and it gives you a remote virtual machine to which you can either SSH or you can expose, and you can open port and you can expose that. So this is honestly super easy. You just go to gitpod.io. We actually have a bunch of projects already set up here. So you go to a repository that you have. You can go to a specific branch. You open a new workspace, and so it's already running. So I can open the one that is already running. So honestly, what it does is it gives you a console here. And you can do something as simple as makeup. In our teams, makeup is basically a makefile target that builds the image and starts up the service. And then it honestly gives you, let me move that away. It gives you a tab, and it basically runs your project. So I can honestly just go here, and this is actually our public API documentation, because it's built in Fast API, right? So this URL is pretty random. It shows that usually this will be something like localhost port 10,000, but now I can just go to that URL and it will work for me. I can see Nick smiling. It will not work for you, but I can actually make it work for you. So this is also super nice when you want to run a demo. So in Gitpod, you have all of the open ports here. You can see that the port 10,000 is private, but I can just make it with one click. I can make it public. And then if any of you went to this URL, you would be seeing the same thing that I am seeing, but it will be basically proxying to Gitpod. The same way that you might have run ngrok, is it called ngrok? I believe it's called ngrok. It's basically a reverse proxy to your local host servers. This is just a reverse proxy that basically proxies to Gitpod servers. So this is actually super nice way to run a demo, right? Because at least on my machines, if I wanted to run like a 12 services with MongoDB, with Postgres, with Elastic, with everything else, and then jump on a Google Meet call and share my screen, it probably wouldn't work very well, right? In this way, I can just start the development environment. I can make the URL public and expose the port in a public way. I can share it with the person that I want to demo that, and they can actually start clicking and tell why they hate what we are building. That's usually how it goes, right? The free tier of Gitpod is actually pretty generous. So I think it gives you like 30, 50 hours per month for free per person, which is it my time?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Which is pretty nice. And the last thing, and then I'll shut up and I can take a couple of questions, is the only thing that we have seen that we have had a problem with is the thing that I mentioned that is nice in Docker Compose is Docker networks, right? Because here I can actually demo that. Maybe I can demo that later because this is just an API gateway. In order for this to be interesting, for example, in order to get our OpenID configuration or our JWKS, if I tried and run it right now, you will get an error saying that there is no service responding, right? Because we need to have the API gateway, and we actually need to have a service responsible for the JWKS, and they need to be able to communicate. So locally, when we run using Docker and Docker Compose, they just connect to the same network. You just connect from the API gateway to the service using its host name defined in the Docker file, and it just works automatically. What we are doing in Gitpod is we are using Tailscale to create a mesh network or a VPN-like network so that the service, I would still need to go somewhere else. For example, still need to go to this service. I would need to spin it up. Then I would need to point my API gateway at this service. And then because they're connected to the same Tailscale virtual network, they would actually be able, most probably right now, they should be able to actually talk to each other. So it actually does, see? So previously we had internal server error, but if I execute it again, it actually gets the response. And the nice thing about that, so this is the API gateway. You can see that this is the well-known JWKS. You can just see the log here. So this service is actually talking to this service. This service is generating our JWKS, responding to the API gateway. API gateway is sending a response, and this browser is my client, and this is actually happening remotely, and this is happening over an encrypted mesh network so that those two things can communicate safely together because they can even be a different data center. I will stop here.
Thank you. Questions?
This Tailscale, how do you configure it? Your Gitpod just contains your project and it starts it. How do you integrate it with Tailscale?
Right. So in Gitpod, what you also have is you go to gitpod.yaml, and gitpod.yaml basically says what your Gitpod environment should do. So usually it would just say something like make build, or maybe yarn, or maybe npm install and npm build. For us, it's just make build and then make test, because test actually generates some test artifacts that make also development faster. So we actually run this. I didn't have time to get into that, but we can run this in what's called a pre-build stage. So Gitpod can actually pre-build your development environment and store a snapshot of it, so that when a developer wants to start working on that, they just get the snapshot. Rather than building a service for like 20 minutes, you basically grab a snapshot, you start running it, and sometimes it takes a couple of minutes, but definitely doesn't take like 20 minutes. So this is one task. The other task is just Tailscale. So we run the Tailscale daemon, Tailscaled. You get a secret or a state from your Tailscale configuration. So you just pipe it here, and then it just works.
Where is the configuration for this Tailscale?
You can,
so somewhere.
Yeah, so you go to Tailscale, you log in with usually your GitHub credentials. Is this my work account? Yes. So you see that we have a multi-user tailnet. So this is the tailnet used by all developers.
Is this free? Probably not.
It actually, there is also a pretty generous free tier, so I don't think we are paying for that right now.
They offer free.
So you can see the APAP is our gateway, and you can see that it's currently connected, and you can see author was the service, or identital was actually the service that I needed for generating JWKS. And because they are running in Gitpod, they just, they come together.
So Tailscale daemon is running like a sidecar, essentially, like
Yes.
a side
Right.
process.
Yeah, precisely. So you can actually, that's a great question. So you can see if I go back here, and if I open terminals, which is, I don't know where it is. Here? No, Remote Explorer. Terminal, new terminal? Oh, here we are. Right, so we see there is a couple of tasks running. So there is the task, this is the task that built and tested, but there is a task. So this is the Tailscale demo, so it is running in the background, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that this actually reports health, this configures routes, configures local addresses here, remote addresses, gateways, and things like that, yeah.
And then a few other questions. So
Yeah.
how do you configure your service to call another service with this Tailscale?
Right, so this is something that we do not have automated yet, just because, so this is our .env file, and so this is the environment for our API gateway, and this says where is identital. Usually identital, so I just modified that, right, you can see. Usually identital, if you, here, if you run it locally, identital is just at identital 10,000, because it's just a Docker network. Right now, just for the sake of this demo right now, I started identical before I show you this demo, and I just copied the URL
From Gitbot.
from Gitbot. So I want to automate that, but I haven't found a way. We just need to use Gitbot's API to basically get the name of that endpoint in a programmatic way, so that we can populate the end when a new service starts.
But then I don't get it how the Tailscale helps you. You are already pointing at an address, at like a public address.
But that way it doesn't have to be public. So I can make it public for you and for other people. But if I do not want to make it public, or I could also here, what I could do is I don't even need to do Gitbot's endpoint. I could probably just copy this guy. I could go here, I could do, I think, this. Then I would need to go back here. I could spin it up again, I think.
So this Tailscale daemon, it intercepts communication?
It doesn't intercept communication, so it is a different network interface.
Oh, okay, just a different network interface.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's clever.
Like an SDN, right?
They can what?
SDN, software defined network thing.
I'm not aware of it. It's basically like a VPN.
Like a VPN.
Yes.
That's clever.
Where is this? Wait. I'm actually not completely sure whether this will work, but I'm curious to see. Try it out. Execute. No, it didn't. There is still something missing. Oh, it couldn't do SSL. So there is. Oh wait. That's probably why. Are we running now? Beep. 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 It does. So now it's now Gitbot is completely. I mean, Gitbot is the runner, but it is the Tailscale interface that actually does where all of the network traffic travels. So this is encrypted. This is not SSL, but this is, I believe, Tailscale uses WireGuard. And yeah, I think that's all for now for me.
It's pretty clever. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few questions, but
Yeah,
we'll
go
get
on.
back to the discussion.
Okay,
Yes,
sure.
Okay. Any questions?
I just want to clarify.
Mm.
So it's similar like Fargate, right? AWS Fargate, but more streamlined for development. Correct?
So I think you mean Tailscale.
No, not the Tailscale. I mean the Gitbot. Right.
No, not really. So Fargate allows you to run Docker fleets automatically, just looking at the Docker Compose or like Kubernetes-like syntax configuration file, right? Gitbot is specifically for development environment,
I see.
so it's not suitable for running anything production grade. And Gitbot environments are disposable in the sense that if you leave them running for like half an hour, Gitpod will kill it. If nobody's connected, if nobody's working on it, they will kill it not to bill you. Right? Fargate is very much production grade. Like you can run services there and they will just continue running. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I ran over.
I think, yeah, so any more questions? Any pressing questions? If not, we can move on to the next talk. Thank you very much, Michal.
Thank you.